Good afternoon, everybody. We are tracking this Arctic front live as it moves through Illinois. I'm getting ready to head up to Buffalo for another record-breaking Buffalo lake effect snow emergency. This is a live update, getting everything set up here. Look at that lake effect snow plume. Looks like we could have 5 to 6 feet of snow. Possibly downtown Buffalo, Buffalo South towns for sure. Blizzard warnings are in effect for the lake effect snow belts. Western lower Michigan, including Grand Rapids, all the way up to Traverse City. Blizzard warnings with the Arctic front, even though not as much snow is falling there. Looks like a snow squall, big wind event. But as I said, I'm activating live storm chase mode, headed up to Buffalo, and I'm going to get that Sting Jet just as it moves through Lake Erie, and some flooding expected on the eastern tips of the lakes as well. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining me here. This live weather report, live emergency briefing. Again, as I mentioned, I am about to head up to Buffalo to intercept this storm. I'm probably going to end up trapped up here. I'm still hoping to make it back in time for Christmas, but look at that lake effect plume rocketing right off of Lake Erie. This is a perfect pattern with the low up off to the north, becoming vertically stacked up there and occluding, sitting in place, and then you have this Arctic air mass that whips around its southern periphery. Buffalo is not the only place that's going to have blizzard conditions, but I do believe it's going to be the hardest hit location. Look at those numbers going above 30 inches. Some lake enhancement too, northern lower, probably 2 feet of snow up near the Mackinac Bridge and eastern upper peninsula. Somebody up north of Montreal is also going to get hammered. Probably 2 to 3 feet of snow up there. That's as that new surface low is also going to form. And I want to show you some of these wave heights too. Look at these massive waves that the Weather Service is predicting, in excess of 20 feet, whipping down the eastern edge of Lake Erie. So you're going to have waves, you're going to have flooding out there on the eastern tip, storm surge, southwesterlies ripping down the main axis of Lake Erie and building those wave heights as well. You're going to have winds probably gusting to 70 miles an hour starting on Friday, starting tomorrow. I'm getting in tonight, and there's likely going to be a period of rain out here, believe it or not, in western New York after I land. And here is the Arctic front, folks. There you can see the Arctic boundary as it's moving through Illinois. Temperatures behind the front drop into the single digits. Look at Springfield, down 8 degrees, Decatur 12, dropping into the single digits rapidly just ahead of the front. You're up into the middle 30s and even the lower 40s. Your wind shift precedes the temperature fall just a little bit, and that's exactly what we're getting here. But look at that Arctic front just rocketing down off to the southeast. So we're going to watch its progression. Temperatures dropping below zero across Iowa. Look at that, minus 11 in Des Moines right now. This is going to be a dangerous front. If you know some neighbors out there that are in need, maybe their structure isn't as insulated, please extend a helping hand. Allow them to maybe crash with you for the holidays. Definitely make sure your pets are indoors too. If your pets are outdoors, this is going to be deadly cold out here. All of the pink and purple, that drops below zero. So you're talking about a minus 11 in Des Moines, minus 10 in Waterloo, minus teens. Look at that, minus 15 in Sioux Falls. Big wind chills as well, those northwesterly winds. Here's the frontal boundary. Grand Rapids, where the blizzard warning is in effect, 34 degrees. And where I'm targeting out here, downwind of Lake Erie, temperatures are near 40 degrees. So well above freezing up there right now, and you're going to get a period of rain first as that moves through. Let's loop this right now. This is present. Thursday, 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m. it arrives in western Kentucky. 6 p.m. moves through Indianapolis. Temperatures drop into the teens in Indianapolis. Moves into western Kentucky. This is western Ohio. Thursday, 11 p.m. Midnight, it finally arrives in the southern Appalachians. Goes right over the Appalachians, across the Carolina Piedmont. This is 5 a.m. Friday morning. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. And then that front goes off the eastern seaboard. But this is when the lake effect event is going to begin. I'm going to want to be out here for this sting jet. Basically, this area of surging Arctic air that rockets from southwest to northeast. By about 5 or 6 in the morning, that's going to arrive in Buffalo. Let me show you Friday. There's Friday, 3 a.m. Watch that sting jet whipping down. This is the leading edge of the very strong cold air, and this is a sting jet as the upper level system is gaining that negative tilt. And once that happens, once the upper dynamics arrive, then you start to get a bomb cyclone that forms. It's going to form down here and lift up into Ontario. That's going to tighten up the isobars. To the south of that system, you're going to have very tight southwest winds, cold southwest winds coming around it. And watch that sting jet as I animate this forward. That's 3 a.m. on Friday when it begins moving over the western edge of Lake Erie. 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m. Winds already out of the southwest. Buffalo, 39 degrees at 7 a.m. And then boom, there it is. 30 at Buffalo, 26. There is going to be a little bit of moderation of those temperatures right near Buffalo. Looks to me like those winds shift over to a west-southwesterly direction by Friday afternoon, and that's when Buffalo is just going to get absolutely hammered. You can go over to the HRRR model, convective allowing model, and you can actually see some of the stronger winds just over the southern edge of the lake, and you can actually see the funneling of the band right over central Lake Erie. You got winds off to the south of it, more of a southwesterly direction. You have winds off to the north of it, more of a northwesterly direction, and they converge over the central axis of the lake. Creates a single dominant lake effect snow plume. You're going to have more multi-band, maybe kind of a combination of single band coming into southwest lower Michigan. I also want to break that down. I would say 8 to 12 inches of snow, but dangerous blizzard conditions also expected there too. But definitely a single, just dominant lake effect snow plume is going to be extending down the end of Lake Erie. And look at some of these totals in there, folks. And this is just the HRRR model only over the next 48 hours. So this includes basically Friday. You're probably going to be talking a couple of feet of snow just on Friday alone. And this band continues too. Just continues to crank. Also expecting quite a bit of snow over the bulbous southwest corner of Lake Michigan. Likely going to be just to the south of Grand Rapids and to the southwest corner of lower Michigan. Could easily get 8 to 12 inches down there. Grand Rapids, you're right on the line. Basically along and west of 131, and Grand Rapids is where you're going to get the heaviest snow. Big winds in northern lower, not as strong as downwind of Lakes Erie and Ontario, but still likely some blizzard conditions and funneling of those winds through the Mackinac Strait. Mackinac Bridge up there. Sault Ste. Marie, Whitefish Point could also get hammered. Let's take a look at the radar, and you can see the snow squalls that are associated with this front. Even some convective activity out ahead of the front. All of that behind the front, you're dropping into sub-freezing air, and you're obviously cold enough air to support snow squalls. St. Louis up through Springfield, starting to move into Kankakee and Chicago as well. Blizzard conditions overnight across eastern Iowa too, but you could definitely see these snow squalls across the front. That's the main frontal boundary that's moving west to east through Illinois right now, and right behind the immediate front, conditions deteriorate pretty rapidly. Visibility dropping to near zero. Even some little convective elements just ahead of the front, showing you a little bit of moisture advection that's happening. This front is just going to continue to plow west to east, arriving at the southern Appalachians by early morning hours on Friday. Chicago, you're already in the snow. And you have westerly winds, so you're not getting any lake enhancement, even though the temperature about 1 degree. Very cold temperatures right in Chicago right now. Those are in Celsius, aren't they? Above freezing in Grand Rapids at 10. .33 knots out of the west, so you're about to drop below freezing. There we go. East-southeasterly winds in Chicago. Temperature 29 degrees right now. Just below freezing, but that snow is definitely starting to move in. You're not getting any lake enhancement just yet. And there's the weather radar. Not seeing any thunder yet behind these. Not as much in the way of convective activity, but that front definitely rocketing off to the southeast. That's earlier today. Let's go out to the present. And this is it. 1 p.m. using the European model. Marching through eastern Illinois. Temperatures drop dramatically back behind it. Temperatures above freezing. Detroit. I'm going to be flying into Rochester area tonight. Late night tonight. Likely going to be a period of rain, but look at the Arctic front marching from west to east. Arriving on the western edge of Lake Erie tonight, right at about when I'm landing in Rochester. It'll be 41 degrees. Blizzard will be cranking in Grand Rapids. Look at the wind direction too. West-northwesterly winds. And that'll bring that heavier band into Grand Rapids. Basically with a west-northwesterly wind or due west, it'll bring that snow into Grand Rapids, especially when the winds are relatively strong. When you get too northwesterly, though, then you start to pass over this land area, and that brings the band off to the south of Grand Rapids. That'll be Kalamazoo, Benton Harbor areas, right along the immediate lake shore is going to have the worst blizzard conditions. But you can see on the windy.com app, we have west-northwesterly winds coming right off the lake into Grand Rapids. That's going to be on Friday. Multi-band likely set up. You might have one of these convergent zones down near I-94 that's set up, or maybe even along I-96, which would help increase the snowfall totals from Grand Rapids and areas off to the east. There's your Arctic front. This is at 7 a.m. on Friday. This is what I say when I'm chasing a sting jet. You're going to get a big surge of wind right along that front. And it's even coming in from the west-southwest because the cyclone off to the north is so intense that it wraps that cold air around its southern periphery. And you almost get this warm air that secludes up here over Lake Huron and Georgian Bay as the low-pressure system occludes up there. Watch the low-pressure system ramp up across Ontario. Really starts to intensify. The westerly winds surging across Lake Erie. Areas like Owen Sound, Huntsville off to the east, Barrie. Likely going to be just outside of those westerly winds, but the northwesterly winds are coming with that cyclone as it intensifies. That's Saturday, Christmas Eve, low pressure, just dominating up here in Ontario, Quebec, Western Quebec, Central Quebec. But the lake effect's going to continue. Look at these winds, west-southwest, down the length of Lake Erie. This is on Christmas Eve, on Saturday. The band is likely going to focus across the Buffalo South Towns on Saturday. I think the band will start off Friday into Saturday, cranking right into Buffalo, 70-mile-an-hour winds expected. And then I think the band's going to settle into the Buffalo South Towns. Again, Dunkirk to Hamburg, up to Orchard Park. Someone's going to end up with another 70 inches of snow. It looks like Lake Ontario, that band might end up initially starting off to the north, hammering the Kingston area. And then as you get toward Christmas Eve and Christmas, the band comes back down through Watertown. 3 to 4 feet expected in Watertown as well. The National Weather Service just upgraded the snowfall totals, including Buffalo and Watertown now. I'm going to try to get back for Christmas. That is definitely one of my goals, is to get back for Christmas. I'll show you what some of the models are showing here, the GFS too. Across Michigan. Probably should be using the Kuchera updates. 10 to 1 sometimes isn't a high enough ratio to capture those true totals. But this is the GFS, and this is what it has over the Great Lakes. Total snowfall, GFS, look at that. That's through 75 hours. That's through Christmas morning. near a foot at southwest lower. Notice how those higher totals are just a little bit inland from the immediate lakeshore. Anytime you get those really strong winds, it'll transport the totals a little bit further inland. Same goes for the northwest lower. Highest totals are in the higher terrain and also pushed just inland across northwest lower into those snow belts. Gaylord could easily get 20 inches of snow. But we go over the Cuchera. This is assuming a 10-to-1. And look at that, factoring in how cold the air mass is, you could easily get up near 30 inches of snow in the Gaylord area, possibly over 20 inches of snow in southwest lower, blizzard conditions. Someone's going to get upwards of 40 inches of snow across the snow belt of the upper peninsula of Michigan. See what the GFS is pumping out for Buffalo. Somewhere 50, 55 inches just to the south, and that's the GFS. So this is a global model that is pumping that out in Buffalo. Look at that snow plume right there. Probably going to see even higher totals than that for the Buffalo South towns. Buffalo downtown, it's got 33 inches of snow, but definitely has that higher total. Erie's even get in on the action. 37 inches of snow indicated there. Even the snowburbs just to the east of Cleveland are going to get in the action. 30 inches of snow possible there. Look at Barrie with those westerly winds right off Lake Huron, shifting to a west-northwesterly direction. Someone's going to get pummeled up there too with 40 inches of snow. GFS is showing a little bit less in Watertown initially, but then you get toward the 25th and 26th, and look at the Tug Hill Plateau. It gets hammered as well. So the Cuchera method is going to factor in kind of how dry and cold the air mass is, so that's why you're getting some of these higher totals. I like to stick to the 10-to-1 kind of as a baseline because sometimes you don't know exactly what's going on inside of this model with these ratios, but as you can see, that is where we are going to target big time snow totals, and waves are going to be a big issue. You got 20 to 24 footers coming off the eastern tip of Lake Erie. That's going to be absolutely insane out there off that eastern tip. Probably going to have the crazy surfers and everything too that are out there. A lot of times you'll see people in wetsuits out across the eastern tip of Lake Erie during these big lake effect events. Biggest waves, obviously with these west-southwesterly winds, they have a chance to grow as they move from west to east across the lake. So basically about halfway across Lake Erie and off to the northeast is where the biggest wave heights are going to be. This is the NAM on Friday morning. Just looks insane. Let's track this Stingjet using the 3-kilometer NAM. And this Arctic front as well. There you can see the Arctic front moving in on the western edge of Lake Erie. You can see the surface low really starting to deepen over central and northern Lake Huron. So there's the surface low. We can see it on the Windy app starting to bottom out here. And once that surface low begins to drop, it's going to excite this Stingjet along the southern periphery of that low. And you're going to get this monster westerly surge along with the Arctic air. Frictionless lake water, so there's nothing to slow down the winds. And you can see the Arctic front as it moves through this location. That is Friday morning, early morning hours on Friday. And watch this move off to the east. It's probably about 5 a.m. Look at the Stingjet. We'll call it a Stingjet here. It's tucked right up on the south side of the low, surging Arctic air, moving from west to east across the lake. And it arrives at the tip of Buffalo right at about 7 a.m. So that's when it arrives. Probably will be some type of a shelf cloud feature, density current, likely a storm surge that arrives with this. You can see the surface low continues to deepen down to 982 millibars with that cold westerly wind along the southwest and southern periphery of the low. Big Arctic air surging in across Lake Erie. Look at how cold the air is too. Single-digit air moving over the lake. That's going to excite a dominant lake effect band, and it's going to come right off the tip of the lake. That's at 12Z about 8 a.m. Initially, the band might come in a little south of Buffalo, but then as that low starts to intensify, it's going to change those winds over to more of a west-southwesterly direction, and that's going to bring the band up into Buffalo. Here you can see the Arctic air mass marching across the central Appalachians. It's actually going to be rain tomorrow morning, even in Rochester. Buffalo, rain changing over to snow, and watch that band consolidate back behind it. There's definitely going to be some snowflakes flying, though, when those winds ramp up. There you can start to see the band begin to show itself across southern Lake Erie. That's going to be late morning hours on Friday. Change over to snow in Watertown by late morning as the Arctic air mass continues to go. So by late morning and close to noon, this solid lake effect band is just going to be dominating. We look at the 850 millibar temps just above the lake. You're talking minus 18, minus 20, with lake temperatures close to 40. That's probably delta T's of about 26 degrees between the lake surface and up at 850 millibars. Just prolific delta T's, a very cold air coming across the lake at 1 kilometer. Look at that at 850. That purple, that is minus 18, minus 17 coming over the lake. Lake temperatures at about 40 degrees. Just a remarkable pattern here. That's your low that intensifies over northern Lake Huron. And as that low continues to intensify, 975 millibars by late morning on Friday, according to the 3 kilometer NAM. And that accelerates those winds over the open lake waters. Look at all the yellows, oranges. You're going to have winds gusting 70 to 80 miles an hour off the tip of Lake Erie into Buffalo. Probably big winds into Watertown as well. Big winds off Lake Huron into southern Ontario as this banana-shaped low continues to intensify. This low is just going to meander through that low pressure zone, meander around, and kind of as it moves, it's going to hold on to this consolidated low back behind it. And that helps maintain these winds out of a west-southwesterly direction right over the heart of Lake Huron. This is at about 1 p.m. on Friday. 973 millibar low now, intensifying in central Ontario, maintaining these big west-southwesterly winds. It looks like the strongest winds anywhere across the Great Lakes region from this system are going to be over the open waters of Lake Erie, pumping right into Buffalo. There you can see the low pressure in this image. Low pressure down to 973 millibars. This is early afternoon on Friday, early afternoon tomorrow. Strongest winds anywhere in the Great Lakes are happening over the central and eastern Lake Erie and spilling over, surging into downtown Buffalo. Also big winds into Watertown, big winds to all along the edge of Lake Huron and off of Georgian Bay. Well, this low is just going to meander around within this low pressure zone, and as it meanders, it's going to lead to subtle wind shifts too over the Great Lakes, and that'll cause the bands to pivot. It'll cause the areas that are getting hit by the heaviest snow to change a bit. So we'll just have to keep an eye on that low as it deepens. 20Z, 972, we're dropping into the 960s by Friday evening. There it is, below 970. And we still have those winds even accelerating. So the winds continue to increase as this low remains stationary just to the north. So this low right here is just going to continue to crank, and these winds oriented parallel to the main axis of Lakes Erie and Ontario only accelerates. Possibly even could have some hurricane force wind gusts in downtown Buffalo, at least along the immediate lakeshore. I would say that's likely. And as this low just remains semi-stationary, you're looking at Friday evening at 23Z. Big winds just ripping out here. I'm going to try to get back for Christmas at my niece's place. It is going to be difficult, but I might just have to drive out, maybe drive all the way around the band. Winds finally do subside by Christmas Eve morning, but the lake effect continues. In fact, look at that lake effect plume. You can see the converging winds here at the surface. The plume actually lifts north up into Niagara Falls. Oh, it's hammering downtown here the whole time, actually. Look at it. It's just going to be hammering. Buffalo, there's Buffalo, the Buffalo South Towns. Just a remarkable band. See what the NAM is now showing through 84 hours. Continues until Christmas Eve night. I usually like to use the convective allowing models for this, but the regular NAM includes this. Still got 34 inches of snow. And this regular NAM doesn't even allow convection. You start allowing convection and you're increasing those totals even further. You start going out beyond the 26, that just continues to crank. Absolutely life-threatening situation here in Buffalo. One of the biggest blizzards in years, one of the coldest air masses in 40 years. But it's all about the lake effect. The crippling blizzard conditions are going to be in those snow belts. Downwind of Lake Erie, downwind of Lake Ontario too. Looking at the radar here. Mesoscale discussion's out, and you definitely have heavy snow right along and just behind the Arctic front. Sporadic, short-lived blizzard snow squall conditions will be possible under a mesoscale snow band as it tracks across parts of eastern Missouri, western Illinois through the early to middle afternoon. Recent surface obs from eastern Iowa show visibilities down to about a quarter mile at times under a persistent, though loosely organized snow band. Based on the latest RAP meso-analysis, this band is primarily being driven by broad-scale ascent ahead of the deepening upper low over the Central Plains. And also frontogenesis, of course. It's an intensifying front as it surges off to the southeast, but some pretty heavy snow being reported. Decatur up toward Bloomington, even into the Chicago area is getting in on the heavier snow. Maybe getting just a little bit of lake enhancement along the immediate lakeshore waters. Probably not, but maybe getting some boosts up to moderate snow. Let's take a look at the actual surface map. See what visibilities are dropping to. We'll use the RAP analysis here. Using a lot of the windy.com app too. The visibility down to about 1 mile. Right along Chicago. Right along the immediate lakeshore. Here you can see some of those visibilities as we're dropping down. Temperature right along the immediate lakeshore in Chicago right now, 34 degrees. That might be some of that enhanced reflectivity as you're getting some melting of the snowflakes. But the western suburbs then dropping down into the teens and lower 20s. Big difference. On the other side of the lake, temperatures into the mid and upper 30s, the blizzard warning areas. And then look at these visibilities drop. You look at that number just to the left of the 2 flakes. That's light snow, 1 mile visibility. Light snow, 2 mile visibility in Waukegan. And you got moderate snow down in Peoria, half mile visibility, winds gusting to 26 miles an hour. So the winds are gusting into the 20s. You really need that low pressure to bomb out in Ontario to accelerate the really insane wind velocities out there. Pretty incredible 3-kilometer NAM, showing near 50 inches of snow by Christmas. Perfect Christmas situation here for Buffalo. I know everybody loves snow as well in Buffalo, but we are tracking this Arctic front as it moves from west to east across the country. The surface low right now, the main surface low is in southwestern Minnesota. Excuse me, the main core of the Arctic air mass. The Arctic air mass now is just surging. Wow. Just watch this thing move right across the screen. Damn. Wow. There's the Arctic front now. In purple, minus teens all the way up. And in fact, you even get a little warmer temperatures off Lakes Manitoba, Lakes Winnipeg. Now look at that surging front. This is as of Thursday, 11 a.m., just a couple hours ago. And now as we're stepping forward to now, knocking Chicago, you're going to be down into the teens, dropping dramatically. It's 12 degrees by 6 p.m. this evening. Front just rocketing off to the southeast. You're staying in the 40s in eastern Kentucky. Central and eastern Ohio stays in the 40s until that front blows through. And I'm going to be targeting the Buffalo area of this storm. I'm going to be going live later on today. Be sure to hit that notification bell. I'm going to be targeting this portion of the surging Arctic front. It's going to arrive here Friday morning at like 6 a.m. off the eastern tip of Lake Erie. It's going to bring with it blizzard conditions as this Arctic air mass spills over Lakes Erie and Ontario. It's going to intensify that band. And look at this pipeline of cold air. Some of the coldest air we've seen in decades coming across the northern U.S. and even into northern Florida. Northern Florida ends up dropping below freezing too. Texas gets dominated. Oklahoma gets dominated. Temperatures dropping. Incredible temperature drops well below zero. Wind chills are going to be like minus 40, minus 50 where it gets real windy. Downwind of Lake Erie, wind chills there could be like minus 50, minus 60 with 70-mile-an-hour winds and temperatures as cold as they are, freezing spray. Flash freeze that's going to be happening tomorrow morning. It's going to begin as a period of rain, change over to snow, and then that lake effect snow plume gets organized over Lake Erie, spilling into the Buffalo area. What a remarkable front. I'm going to show you some of the blizzard warnings out there right now. Look at them in red. Those are the blizzard warnings in red, just dominating. This is all post-frontal, not as much snow falling. And remember that blizzard warnings are dependent on the wind and the visibility out there. Keep that in mind as well. And you got red blizzard warnings mainly along the lake effect snow belts, the entirety of northern lower Michigan. Of course, northern Wisconsin and along the Lake Superior snow belts. Duluth also included that blizzard warning. Blizzard warnings as well down near Buffalo and for Watertown in red. Winter storm warnings throughout in pink. And you're probably going to get lake effect as well down in this location. Some people are going to overperform central PA, Maryland, the western slopes of the Appalachians. Rochester, you're in a winter storm warning. That's where I'm going to be arriving tonight. It's rain right now, heavy snow, 6 to 10 inches total. Winds gusting as high as 60 miles an hour. And that's going to expire 7 a.m. on Sunday. It's supposed to fly out on Saturday. May just end up having to do a one-way rental. Could be loss of power, numerous power outages. I've seen this being described as a once-in-a-generation Arctic blast, once-in-a-generation flood event. Lakeshore flood warning remains in effect from 7 a.m. Friday to 7 p.m. Saturday. Significant lakeshore flooding expected. Lake level at Buffalo may exceed 12 feet above low water datum, which would be more than 4 feet above flood stage. So a big storm surge is going to whip off the eastern edge of Lake Erie. Very rapid rise of water levels will result in significant and possibly extensive lakeshore flooding and damage along the Lake Erie and upper Niagara River shores. Along the Lake Erie shore, flooding is likely along Route 5 in Hamburg, Buffalo Harbor, Canal Side, Buffalo River Works, Dunkirk Harbor, Hoover Beach, and Woodlawn areas in Hamburg. Temperatures in the teens and single digits. So that's a big event. And we saw some of those wave heights that are coming off the eastern tip of the lake. There's basically going to be a storm surge that's going to impact the eastern tip of Lake Erie and Buffalo along the immediate shoreline down to Hamburg too. Big time wave height. So a massive storm surge is going to arrive by tomorrow morning in Buffalo. And we're going to have to be there to document it. Team Dominator immersive coverage. Blizzard warning also begins at 7 a.m. Friday, extending until 7 a.m. Sunday. 1 to 3 feet total snow accumulations, winds gusting as high as 70 miles an hour Friday and Friday night. Blizzard conditions will develop Friday afternoon and lasting into Saturday night. So you got the lakeshore flood warning, you have the blizzard warning. All of it begins in Buffalo with this monster plume coming off the edge at about 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. That's when I think that the worst of the storm surge is going to happen tomorrow morning. And the Weather Service is predicting 4 feet above flood stage. It's going to impact Route 5 near Hamburg, Buffalo Shores, right along downtown Buffalo too, along the immediate shoreline. And look at that Tug Hill Plateau gets hammered too. Tug Hill Plateau gets pounded. Big plume coming off the tip of Lake Erie. 40 inches of snow potentially there. big snow too in Erie, PA. All oriented parallel to the wind direction. So a pretty dangerous morning is expected tomorrow morning in Buffalo. So be sure to tune in to my live stream. Hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, because I'm going to be going live right along the immediate shoreline to cover that storm surge starting at about 7 a.m. or the arrival of those very intense westerly winds to the immediate shoreline of Buffalo. I'll be there. I want to go back to Friday morning. Look at it on the HRRR, folks. This is going to be the arrival of the storm surge event. 978 low just to the north of it. You have got to be kidding me with this. Look at this pattern. 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, Friday morning. Stingjet's going to be whipping here. 40 knot winds back behind it. That's going to be the arrival of a dangerous snow event and storm surge event especially. Gotta be kidding me with that. There it is. There's the low. 978 low over the heart of southern Ontario. And I'm going to be right there, right at the tip of the lake. 7 a.m., that's when the lakeshore flood warning begins. That's your Stingjet, basically the Arctic front surging across. That's the leading edge over eastern Lake Erie. And by the time that arrives over the eastern tip of the lake, see how the lake constricts too right at the end? That's going to lead to a flood of maybe even 4 feet above flood stage. And that's going to flood out Route 5 near Hamburg. It's going to flood out downtown, the coast of Buffalo Shores area. Icy cold water too. Potentially deadly situation if you get caught up in that. And look at the winds accelerate. This is at 7 a.m., 7 to 8 a.m. Eastern time, arriving right at the tip of the lake. 976 low over southern Ontario, whipping around the southern edge. Look at that. Big time. 974. The HRRR has it right over the diabatic heating max, if you'll call it that, right over Lake Huron. That low pressure wants to hang over Lake Huron. Big southerlies around the southern edge. Strongest winds, though, right over Lake Erie. Worst of the conditions, it looks like Lake Erie is going to be experiencing. Buffalo, Erie, PA, Dunkirk, Hamburg, Buffalo, Orchard Park. Hopefully I'll be able to fly out of Rochester on Christmas Eve to get back here to spend Christmas with my mom and nieces. Otherwise, I might just have to get a one-way rental and blast south 11 hours to get back to my mom's place. Here is the surface load, 973 millibars. Strong west-southwesterly winds along the southern edge of it. Leading edge of that storm surge causing Stingjet is going to be surging across Ontario too, Lake Ontario, as you get toward midday, and that arrives in Watertown. Likely some big flooding there as well, maybe greater than 3 to 4 feet. But really the most dangerous flood is going to be right here, right off the tip of Lake Erie into Buffalo on Friday. Look at that, 17Z. 970 millibar low over Georgian Bay, just ripping up there. 968 southern Ontario. Should be the peak of the winds here Friday afternoon into Friday night. And there's your low just dominating up there. So thank you everybody for tuning in to this live weather report. I am going to be heading into Rochester, heading down to intercept that storm surge event right along the tip of Lake Erie. Probably also a storm surge event right along the immediate coastline of southeastern Lake Huron. Wouldn't be surprised to see storm surge on the Canada side of Lake Ontario out near Kingston. So big winds, gusting over 70 miles an hour right off the tip of Lake Erie, starting Friday morning at 7 a.m. Dangerous storm surge too, 4 feet above flood stage, could be moving into Buffalo too. So thank you everybody for tuning in to this live emergency weather report. Lake effect is going to be dominating Lower Michigan too. Possibly a 1.5 feet there southwest of Grand Rapids. But look at the multi-band nature of the event in Northwest Lower. And that's because the winds are largely perpendicular to the lakes up there. But still, you're going to have those blizzard conditions. You may not see 5 or 6 feet of snow. But you have the double fetch too off Lake Superior into Northwest Lower. Looks like with the stronger winds, the heaviest snow is going to be transported just a little bit inland. Gaylord area, you got this higher elevation across northern Lower Michigan, and a lot of times that's why you get your highest totals there. The northwest winds just pumping into that higher terrain across Northwest Lower. Also out here along and east of Marquette's going to get hammered all the way up to Whitefish Point. And then as the winds shift, you're going to also, it looks like northwest winds will also hammer the Keweenaw Peninsula and areas just to the east of Ashland, Wisconsin, and areas off to the east. Looks like a dominant band coming into Ausable Point too. And boy, look at this action out here. Just whipping, just dominating a single band, double fetch right off the tip of Lake Superior. Kind of exacerbated, intensified right by the proximity to the land there over Northeast Lower. And then comes right down into Ontario near the Barrie area. Could easily get 40, 50 inches of snow right there too. Big polar vortex event just dominating out here. And also keep an eye on Southwest Lower. Could get in on the blizzard conditions. And then the band off Lake Erie just continues to crank. Multi-band event, Marquette out to Whitefish Point as well. So thank you everybody for tuning into this weather report. The Arctic front is surging into Indiana now. It's temperatures plummeting in Chicago with snow showers. I've got to get ready to go. I also got to wrap my Christmas presents. But I'm going to be heading up to Rochester, and then I'm going to be right on the eastern tip of Lake Erie when that storm surge event arrives at about 7, 8, 9 in the morning. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Never stop chasing. Stay safe out there. Dangerously cold air mass on its way.